Welcome to Soul Rising. We're your hosts, Amy and Erin. We're two everyday mediums who are passionate about taking the woo-woo out of spirituality and bringing it down to earth. So put the kettle on, grab a chair, and join us.
Hey everyone!
Welcome back!
Welcome back, episode 44.
Yeah, this time episode 44. And I'm just gonna sidebar this for a second because my stomach is grumbling something fierce. So if you guys can hear it or if Scott can hear it, I apologize. It's not spirit, it is my stomach, okay? If you hear a grumble.
You know what's funny is it reminds me of last weekend. This is off topic. But last weekend I did my level 1 and level 2 Reiki practitioner training, and my Reiki master that was teaching me said, it's totally normal afterwards, or even during the attunements that we're receiving, at the end, myself and another member in the training gave each other distance Reiki to each other, kind of live, on in the Zoom call in the training, and our stomachs were rumbling, all this noise in the body, and she's like, that's completely normal as your energy is kind of clearing. I know that you're hungry and that's why you've got that happening, but it just reminded me.
That's so funny. And now I'm just going to say every time my stomach is grumbling, it's just an energy clearing.
Maybe, right?
Because maybe, you never know.
I don't have gas. It's just my energy clearing.
If I have gas, I will tell you guys. Yeah. I will be honest with you, okay? We have a very open relationship. Yeah, we're not.
We're here to continue the chat about children in spiritual experiences, paranormal experiences. Last week we talked about our experiences as children or with our own children, or me as a parent, Erin with the children that she's worked with, and that was cool. And so today we have some listener stories to share.
Can't wait.
I'm excited. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Do you want me to start with one, or do you want to start?
I have them written down in a notebook because those of you that shared with me sent me voice notes in the DMs on Instagram. So I was in my bed listening, taking notes in my notebook. So yeah, I'm going to read off my notebook. But Erin, yeah, you can go ahead and share.
I had one listener messaged me on Instagram and just shared that as a child, she never wanted to go to bed upstairs alone because she claimed to be seeing ghosts. So that was really, really cool. I mean, I don't know if other listeners have had similar experiences where maybe they didn't want to go somewhere as a child, or their child is, fearful to go in a particular spot. I mean, for me, I did have this thing with the basement, but I also think it wasn't necessarily spirit. It was my sort of fear of the dark a bit. And the basement was just kind of cold and just eerie for me. And she also said, though, that there was another time as a child, and I'm just going to share this because this is from the same listener, that she had a really high fever and she saw Mother Mary in blue, though she just, said, she emphasized there wasn't really evidence to say that it was Mother Mary, but she saw a figure in blue, and later she believed it to be Mother Mary.
Very cool.
Which I thought was really interesting. So she was, I think she was, did I just say this? But she was quite sick, and she saw a figure. So I don't know. I think, Amy, too, you had shared, too, that you had a similar experience, right?
It was not with Mother Mary.
But it was not with Mother Mary. Yeah. Okay.
No, I was sharing when we took our little interlude in between episodes here, and I had read what Erin was going to share about her listener who was sharing about Mother Mary. I was like, that reminds me of a story, but it certainly was. I never perceived this as being spirit, but it's just kind of a funny story. When I was a kid, I had chicken pox, and my mom's always told me that as a kid, anytime I would run a temperature, that I would hallucinate, and so. Yeah, I don't know why, but it's just something that I've always been told. When I have a fever, I hallucinate. So I had chicken pox. I remember laying on the living room couch, kind of resting, watching TV here and there. And I hallucinated. I saw the character from Cheetos, like the Chester the Cheetah, in like all his orange glory, coming down the stairs towards me, and I know it freaked me out. And I still remember this experience as feeling so real to me. I was like, it was as if, maybe a mascot of Chester the Cheetah was in my actual living room. Like, that's how real it seemed to me. Do I think that spirit? I don't know if I'd go that far. Who knows?
I
Right?
said you never know. I said to Amy, maybe it was spirit. It was one of your guides, but they were showing themselves into something that you were like very familiar with, so that you would be comfortable.
Maybe, but it also terrified me. I will tell you that. I would be less terrified if I saw my guide walk down, or like an elderly relative, right? Because this was actually after the near-death experience. So.
Oh, wait. Did your mom say that you would hallucinate after your near-death experience?
I don't know, because I was so young. I was like 6, so I don't know if
Call her up.
Get her on the phone. Yeah, no, I don't know. I'll ask her. I just know.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And I think my siblings do too. I think what I've heard is like my siblings and I just seem to hallucinate every time we have high fevers. So I was sharing with Erin that like my little guy, my 6-year-old, was running a fever last night. I think he's got like that back to school cold. And knock on wood that the rest of us don't get it. And he was running a fever, and I was like, oh God, what kind of night is tonight going to be? We're going to be hallucinating.
Are you going to see the Cheeto Man? You know what? I did real quickly before you go on to the listener stories that you shared. It did that story. As soon as she said it to me, made me think of another story from my friend, and I hope it's okay to share this. I think it is. I'm not going to give anything away, and I also don't think he's listening. But if you are, I'm sorry, and I hope this is okay. But shared with me that his sister actually had a seizure one time, and during the seizure, she was saying that she kept seeing a lady in a red dress.
You know what's wild that you're bringing up a seizure is that my middle son that we've already talked about in the last episode, it seems like my kids, like, I haven't ever noticed them hallucinate, or they haven't told me about it, but it seems like something where my kids, like, if they get a fever, it will be a really high fever, and then it will break and they'll like be well, like, which actually I've heard is a good thing, right? But when he was 2, he kind of had the sniffles. He had the sniffles. He wasn't feeling 100% well. And I remember kind of bringing him into bed with me for the night because, I wanted to keep an eye on him. And I woke up in the middle of the night to like movement in the bed that was almost jerky. And my initial thought, I remember thinking, oh God, is he vomiting in the bed? Right? Because it was that kind of like movement. So I got up and turned the light on, and he was having a seizure, and his eyes were like blinking super rapidly. His whole body was convulsing. So I called 911 because I was terrified. We ended up we took an ambulance, all those things, just to make sure that he was good. But they said it was a febrile seizure. So, yeah, which, side note, febrile seizures, what I learned from this experience is that it's not necessarily how high the temperature is. It's how quickly your temperature goes from normal to high. So if it happens really quickly, that's how
your body goes into.
Yes. Yeah. And he's never had another one, but I always, like, if he has a temperature, I just am proactive, and I like give him
err on the side of caution.
I give him, some sort of Tylenol, Advil kind of thing, just so we don't have to worry about that potentially happening. But yeah, I was thinking about it as we were talking about fevers, and then you brought up seizures. So I'm like, gotta share that one. You never know what your intuitive downloads, like, if there's a reason that comes in, like maybe somebody's is going to be listening, is going to be like, oh, needed to hear that, or I don't know. Yeah, you never know.
It's true. You never know. Like we say, we always give it anyways.
Yeah, one of the listeners actually that I'll talk about soon that shared some stories. She was sharing last night how she was listening to our Q&A recently episode. And I believe it was Ada. She was talking about some sort of church, or I don't remember. She was sharing that. And then my listener who lives in Pennsylvania, so another part of the world, was like, I was listening to that driving, and I'm literally like, I don't remember if she said she was passing the same church, but in Pennsylvania, because there's an area in Pennsylvania that is a lot of Polish heritage, and it's, yeah.
Oh, so she was pastoring like maybe the same
It was the
denomination or the
same, yeah,
same.
like church, but like where she was. And she's like, as I was driving by listening to her talk about that on your Q&A, I'm literally in the same area as the one here. So she's like, I thought that was kind of neat. And then she said, I'm so glad I have you to talk about these things with, because nobody else would believe it. Like, it's just insane. And then
Yeah.
we
Like,
were,
what are the chances?
yeah, we were kind of, I said, you know what I kind of think? I think that as you become more aware, I think that thought creates, right? I talk about this all the time. I do think thought creates. And I think what happens with synchronicities, especially, is you will say, like, hear that, and then you'll see something. There'll be some sort of synchronicity. And for me, what I think that the purpose of that is one, to show the interconnectivity of all things, and two, to show how powerful your thoughts are. I think that if you're hearing something and you're kind of open and aware to the laws of the universe, the laws of attraction and manifestation, all those things, I think your thought can literally like create and find that synchronicity for you. And I think for me, it's a way to go like, see, this is how powerful you are. This is how powerful you are. Like, your thought creates. Now here's the synchronicity.
I agree. Actually, that's yeah. I mean, we won't get too into it, but I kind of think that will tie in a little bit to the next 2 weeks of our episodes of what we're going to be talking about. That's really cool. Okay, cool. Love it. Synchronicities.
You were talking about fear a little bit with a child, I think, there a second ago. I
Yes.
wanted to share a
Yeah.
quick
She
one.
was fearful to go
Upstairs, yeah, or to bed. I wanted to share a really quick share from one of our listeners. So when her child was very young, she said she can't remember his exact age, but he was like just kind of learning to talk, so pretty young. They were outside, and his father was talking to somebody like in a van in front of their house, and he kind of like approached them and immediately got terrified, started screaming, you that the man had shot and killed him. You shot and killed me, and was screaming bloody murder. And they were all freaked out, and they're like, what is happening? And so my viewer, she actually asked her child last night, hey, do you remember this? And he did not remember it, but their kind of intuition at the time was, I think this is some sort of past life thing. Like, I think these two have been
yeah.
sort of run in before, and this little guy was just immediately like, oh, like, you're the bad guy, right? Like, I don't know, but I thought that was wild.
Or like maybe somebody like he looked maybe similar to somebody in a past life. That reminds me of, remember that time that did I share this? I don't know, in my teens, early teens, okay? And there was I think it was like a CSI show, or there was like a murder show, okay? It was like just a TV show, and something was happening to this woman, okay? And it hit me like in a very, I was not as young as this listener's child, but it hit me in a very real way. Like, I remember started screaming. My friend was with me. I was with my dad, and I was like yelling at my dad. And because he was like, Erin, what? It's okay. You're okay. And I was like, you don't know what it's like being a woman. You have no idea. And I just like was screaming. I said, look at, and I was screaming, and because it really, like, I thought that maybe had happened to me, something similar, or something triggered that response from seeing that. So maybe something similar happened to her child, of like seeing him triggered something in him that caused that reaction.
Because he
Yeah.
was so young, right? And like she said, he was just speaking. So like, to be like, you shot and killed me.
You did, like, that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was wild too. So that was one share. And then there's another one. Okay, so I'm just going to look at this here. So she said in 1979, her parents moved to a home that had been built in the 1920s. And she used to kind of go up into the attic space, and there was all this old, what did she say, like typewriter, like a really old fashioned typewriters, and paper and stationery and all kinds of things like that would have kind of been from that 1920s like era. And she used to go up there and she was fascinated. She'd play all the time. And her mom actually said it was almost like she was never scared. She wanted to spend all her time up there. But it was almost as if somebody was teaching her how to use things, because
Oh, yeah,
she
goosebumps.
knew as a little kid, like, how to use all of the stuff up there. And so as she got older, she started to inquire with her parents, like, what's the history of the house? Like, who lived here before? Like, what's the story? And they told her that, let me see. She started asking questions about the history, who owned it, and she was told he was a well-known copywriter for like a very major newspaper in this area of the United States. And she had a deep knowing that she had been with him. He had been with her in spirit in the attic that whole time, and was almost like showing her the ropes of how to use things. Now, something else that was wild to her was that her parents had met him like 6 months previous to them actually buying the house. So apparently they had gone, and I apologize if this is wrong, but I think this is what she said. They had gone to see the house and like met this older man. He was living. And then like 6 months later, he would have passed, and his son sold the house to her parents. So she was like 2 years old at this time, but she remembers meeting the man, the old man. And her mom was like, there's no way, because it was like 6 months before he passed that we actually bought it. And you were too, like, how would you ever remember this interaction? She's like, no, I know him. I've met him before. So now, like, as an adult, she can see that this is likely that she was experiencing his spirit. And then as an adult, she had her friend kind of look up his genealogy, and his life, and a lot of things that she knew about him was validated.
Oh my God.
Right. And then as she was sharing this story with me last night, she started to smell, right? Like, this would be Claire aliens, menthol. And she's like, oh, he's here with me right now as I'm speaking. I'm getting, my arm hairs are standing up. She smelled menthol out of nowhere in her living space. So that's the first story she shared with me. I don't know if you have any thoughts, reactions.
The whole left side of my body is like goosebumps. Is tingling. And also I wasn't sitting on it, but my foot is weirdly asleep. I wasn't sitting on it. I don't think I was doing anything. Like, why does that happen? Is that spirit, or is that like just my body?
I don't know, but that's wild to me. So she just had this deep inner knowing, like, yeah, I am familiar with him, even if maybe I shouldn't be familiar with him. Like, maybe I didn't actually meet him, but like I did. Yeah. And when the person,
That is so cool to like have that, and like obviously, yeah, to have that familiarity with him. Like she was like, no, I met him. Yeah, like she's like a few times.
right? And that's why she got the person to look up the genealogy, because she's like, no, like, these are the things I know about him, and then they turned out to be true. So I thought that was super cool. Another thing she shared that's also kind of history based. So this is a listener who is super into history as well.
Yes. Well, we know the two are so in sync, right? You can't
Yes,
have spirits without the history.
I believe that for sure. And I think it's interesting too that, like, he would have been like showing her the history of his, like, how he did things. Like, there's a historical lens with that story as well. And then they went to when I think she was like 11, she told me they went to Monticello, which is, I had to look this up afterwards. It's this a plantation where Thomas Jefferson
Cool.
plantation. Yeah. And they went there as a family, I think, for like a trip or sightseeing or what have you. And I think there was like, she was in a certain place with her parents, and then she kind of like took off, which was unusual in itself, right? Because she's like, I'm in an unfamiliar place, but like I left my parents, and I was like, I have to go here. And she knew exactly where to go. She kept saying she had to go to the orchard, I think she said, and she just found her way there as if she had been there before. She just knew exactly how to get there. So she shared that story as well, because she's always kind of been fascinated, had a connection with Thomas Jefferson and the history of it. So she's like, isn't it interesting? Because it felt as if I had literally been there before, and I found my way quite easily. Yeah. Now
I love that.
I love
so
it too.
Much.
I love it. And I love the name Monticello.
Monticello.
Now her child, she shared that a quick little story. that when he was in daycare, when he was quite young, the daycare kind of provider teacher had sent her a video of her son like looking in a certain direction, laughing, like as if they're having an interaction with someone. And the daycare provider was kind of like, I need to take a video of this and send it to his mom, because it's like he's literally having like an interaction with someone. And she shared that was something that happened very often when he was little, in his crib and in the car and different things like that. And she feels intuitively that he's hanging out with her dad, who is in spirit. So yeah, I thought that and I hear that kind of stuff often in client readings. I don't know if you've ever bring that kind of stuff where like I will bring up, say, like somebody's parent, like mom or dad in spirit, and they'll bring up their grandchild. I'm like, hey, like they are with them when they are in the crib, and I'll like bring up aspects of the room or things in the room, and I'm like, yeah, they're having
Yeah,
conversations.
they're there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I find
Even
like
with like animals too.
yes, yeah.
Spirit animals. Yeah.
And I feel like people like, but the clients, like when I bring this stuff through, they're like, I knew it. I had this intuitive sense that she was talking to my mom. But I love to point stuff that like that out, because I'm like, you do know. We always know. We know. We just talk ourselves out of it. Yeah. But we know there's a reason you intuitively feel like that. It's not wishful thinking.
Nope. Amy and I are just here. We're the validators.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, do you have any more stories to share? You want me to keep going?
No, but I do. Okay, while you're looking for the next story, I do have this interesting thing that just happened. If you're watching, you probably just saw me like just check my phone real quick, because we literally were just talking about Ada, sorry, and she messaged me. And that is cool, because that was a story about synchronicities, and her ears must be ringing. So I just wanted to share that. That's pretty friggin' awesome.
Synchronicity.
Sorry.
Yeah. The interconnectivity of all things. Another message I received was from a lovely listener in Spain, and she wanted to share that her friend's son almost passed away at birth. Like, I don't know what happened, if there was difficult birth process or what, but she just shared that he had almost passed away at birth. As he started to grow up and develop, he was diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum. And she wanted to share that point because for her, she feels intuitively like there is a connection with kids that are maybe on the spectrum or just neurotypical, that feels
Or neurodivergent.
Yes, sorry, that's what I meant. Yes. Neurodivergent feels like connected to consciousness and connected to expansion of consciousness, right? And so she's like, I intuitively feel like that's the case, right? But she was also sharing that he's always kind of been looking out of the corner of his eye and like it kind of interacting, again, like the other viewer was sharing, interacting with someone, laughing at somebody, just always seems to be like operating at a different level. Yeah. And I wanted to ask how you feel, because you've worked with kids on the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I love that this is coming up, because I was like, oh, maybe I can talk about this experience. And it looks like I can. Synchronicities. I just recently, the other day, one of our students, so all the students I work with are on the autism spectrum in some form, or in some spectrum, right? It's a spectrum. And one of the students, as we were walking out to like go greet her parents, she kept looking back. And my coworker was the one to say, why are you looking back? And she's not looking at, or she's just looking at it. It's like somebody else was coming with them. And she goes, is there a ghost? Like kind of jokingly. And in my mind, I thought, yeah, there probably for sure is. Like she sees something for sure, because I mean, it's not uncommon, right, for kids on the autism spectrum. Like eye contact is difficult, can be difficult for some folks, right? But it wasn't that at all. She was just definitely, there was something that caught her eye. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had this question before, and I feel like we could maybe do a whole episode on it in the future, about, maybe kids on the autism spectrum, or that have ADHD, an ADHD diagnosis, like if what our thoughts are on that, connected to consciousness, connected to spirituality. So I feel like that's probably a whole other episode that we could talk a lot more on. We'll make a note of it, and something that we'll speak about in the coming months, because I feel like there's a lot to that. But yeah, I just had shared with her that I agree. I do believe there's a connection there. It's like just kind of being aware of something beyond what maybe most of us are aware of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think all it is it's just a different way of thinking, right? And viewing the world and perceiving. Um, yeah. I keep hearing different frequency, different frequency.
It wouldn't surprise me at all that they're on a different frequency. Yeah. Yeah. And I've kind of had the thought sometimes, especially with children that are on the spectrum and are nonverbal, like if that may be in some way because the frequency that they're operating on, there's no need for words, like it's more
Mm-hmm.
telepathic. And so
Well, and we know that that's exactly like spirit. It's all telepathic. Yeah.
so it's almost like they're coming in as kind of, for lack of better words, like the pioneers in some sort for this new consciousness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's
a new
already
way
that
of being.
awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's fascinating, and I definitely feel like we should talk about that at a later episode. Yeah. The last story that I have to share, so there's a couple from the same person again. The first one was when she was a young child, and her grandpa had passed away, and she was in her room at night, and saw like her grandpa's figure in a shadow, kind of aspect that I can relate to, because I've experienced this too, actually, with my grandfather, and just knew it was her grandpa, like just knew it was his presence in the hallway. I think kids just have this knowing, like they just know. It's not a question. It's like, no, that's just grandpa. Like they don't have all that, like, well, like maybe, yeah,
There's
it
none of that
is.
like that doubt. You that doubt. Yeah, they just trust. Yeah.
Doing when in mediumship is turning off that logical brain and just being open to
We're
what is.
just trusting.
Yeah, we're just trusting in the moment. So I thought that was cool. And I just wanted to explain, like, so for me, and I validated this with her too, like seeing the shadow, it's something that you do see objectively, like with your own eyes. It's not like in your mind's eye, but yeah, it's just this knowing that comes in. So I remember seeing my grandpa. I was not a child. I was, I think, 30 or something. I was quite upset about something. And I saw the shadow, like shape. I don't know how to describe it. It just looked like a shape. It was the same stance, the same body shape, everything as my grandfather had been. And this would have been like a year, 6 months after he passed away. Same height, everything. And I just had this intuitive knowing that that was him, and he was just coming to lend his support in some way. So that was an experience she had as a child. And then when she was a little bit older, I think she said like 10 or 11, she was like with her family in their home, and she kept going, "Can you smell that? Can you smell the roses?" It was as if she had like roses right underneath her nose. And she's like, "Can you smell the roses in here?" And her family are like, "No, like you're crazy. There's not even any flowers in the house." And then they found out that I believe she said her great aunt, it was a great aunt, but Rose passed away. Yeah.
Whoa.
So the way that she would come through.
The way that she came through.
Yeah. And sometimes it's funny because I'm relating that to sometimes how, especially recently, I've had flower names come in from spirit, and very often, and one of the most common ways they've shown me as of lately has been with a rose. So I'll get like the flower, but I'll know it's not like saying I liked this flower, or
You'll know it's a
it's a
name.
name. It's like there's a name. So I will say, okay, she's showing me a rose, and this is my symbol for a like kind of floral name. So, and I'll say, and then I came out with there's three. I was like rose, daisy, iris, 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 and they were like, it's iris, like which is not a common name either. So, yeah, it just
That's really cool. See, that's another like example of that like spirit, and the way they communicate and work with us is constantly changing. It's always shifting. There's no one right way. That it's Yeah, it's cool. I freaking love it.
They assist in our like spiritual education. I feel like.
Oh yeah, 1000%.
The last one I wanted to share I thought was really cool, and she said it's the one that kind of stands out the most to her as an adult. She was 16. She had just like new driver. She was driving. She sings, and so she was like a wedding singer. She was hired to be a wedding singer for a wedding, and she was driving to get there, and she was on this road. I feel like she said it was unfamiliar and it was mostly treed. It's not like there's houses and businesses. She's driving and she's like stressed about getting there, about timing, worried about letting the people down. Almost felt like a little bit like, am I lost? Like I don't know where I'm going. So she prayed in this moment, like, please help me find my way so I can get there on time, so I don't let these people down. And then within moments above, I think she said 50 feet ahead of her, something like that, ahead of her, there was a man. Seemed to appear out of nowhere. Now, he was far enough away that she shouldn't have been able to see his eye color, but she knew he had the brightest blue eyes. And he smiled, this beautiful, friendly smile, and he just kept pointing a direction with his arm, kind of like over his head. And she was like, okay. And she like drove past and he's gone. And she's like looking in her rear view mirror. She's looking the side mirrors, and she's like, he's not there anymore. Like, where would he have gone? Like, there was nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go.
And then, like, in the direction, like, as she drove a little bit in the direction he pointed, there was another road. She pulled down that road, and there was a convenience store. She got out. The lady that was in there was like, oh, you must be such and such, the wedding singer. And she was like, yeah. And she's like, hop in, I'm heading there now. Or like, follow me, I'm heading there now. I'll take you there. And so she found her way. She found her direction. And so she intuitively said to me that she feels like that was an expression of Archangel Michael, because that's who she prayed to.
That's who she. Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that.
I love having chats like this because it really normalizes experiences too. Like that everybody has a story. Everybody has a story.
Everybody has a story to share. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's like I have some ideas that maybe we can talk about too after as a way to like maybe share more stories from you guys. But I love that. That was amazing. Thank you so much, everybody who submitted their stories and took the time to share and reach out. Like we want to share more.
Yeah, we love it.
So send them our way. Yeah.
Let's keep normalizing this experience. I know we're getting close to the end here, but I don't know. Do you want to share, like, what are some things, do you have any like tips or advice that you could give people that have children or work with children that are, I mean, other than just like allow them to speak and allow it without judgment, all right? Is there anything else you want to share?
I mean, I would say, obviously, don't force your child to, maybe say, do you have any past life experiences or anything, just kind of let it, I think it will, let it happen organically, go with it. I really think that the best thing that people can do is what we talked about, and just to be supportive and create that openness, that space, that safe space for them. Because I know that I definitely personally benefited from having that open and safe space as a child, and that kind of freedom of expression. My parents, I think because they were very much like told, this is what you have to do this, there was like a way to do things that I think they wanted to go against the grain. And I very much benefited from having that open kind of household, to be able to, I was very fortunate to have that. I know not a lot of people are as fortunate. So I would say, making sure that we're just creating that space for communication and talking about stuff like this, like what we're doing here, maybe with normalizing these experiences.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And, and it's a commonality actually with people that I work with sometimes, that I will kind of validate their own intuitive connection or their own experiences through bringing them through, like as a third party. And then, and they will share with me maybe some childhood conditioning, some trauma, some religious trauma, like things in which they were not validated, in which they were told like, this is wrong, you need, like, no, like, stop. I don't want to get too personal, but I do know of one person that shared with me that their parents would have taken them to a priest, and the priest would have kind of tried to get the demon out of them, because she was experiencing intuitive experiences, because she felt her grandmother come through her to her at night once after she had passed, or would have a dream and knew that her grandmother had passed overnight, and that equaled demon, right? So I'm not coming across as judgmental about anybody's religious beliefs, but I'm just saying you can see how that would shut somebody down of their own experiences and make them feel crazy, right? Because this person is now, much older in life and is like, maybe I'm not so crazy, like,
Yeah, it makes me think of like all the like mental health institutions that existed way back when that actually didn't get shut down until quite recently, right? I think that there was one that was still open in the 90s, but people would literally send their children who maybe didn't fit this mold, this into society, or it really wasn't uncommon too for some parents to lock their kids away in an attic, right? Because they were different. Gosh, what is a conversion? There's still conversion therapy that exists today, which is just infuriating. And that, to me, I don't care what you believe. I don't believe that's terrible and harmful and bullshit. That's what I say to that. Okay. So, and I'm sorry, but if so it's I think it's no different when we do things like that than some of these institutions that existed and some still exist today.
doesn't it kind of reminds me, I know we're getting close to time, and it's funny because the first time I looked down it said 3535, and then I just looked down, it said 3939, so we're getting some synchronous angel numbers there, synchronicities. It reminds me of like the biography I read with Ram Dass, and he was sharing about his older brother, who was also quite spiritual, but like was really he was kind of explaining how there's like when you're opening up spiritually, especially in the way that he did, right, through taking different drugs and things like that, like it can kind of like sometimes it can be too much, like it's almost like you're thrown into something that your soul is just not ready for. But he was kind of sharing that his brother, how spiritual his brother was. His brother actually had spent time in and out of a mental institution because he thought he was Jesus. And he was sharing like that his brother's expression with spirituality was coming from that ego identity, and so that was the thing that was causing him so much harm in his life. And it's more about like, yes, you are an expression of God, you are this divine, yes, but the ego wants to separate it to say like I am Jesus, right, rather than like we all are divine. So it was like the ego was getting in the way there. But
yeah, which again is going to tie in to
the next one, yeah, so that's a good segue. Let's end it there. Thank you again for listening, for sharing all your stories. If you ever have any more, happy to share
please
them.
yeah
Love this.
please send them to us.
Okay, take good care. See you next week, guys.
Bye.
If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and tune in each week as we dish on all things spiritual.
Don't forget to like, comment on what you would like to hear us talk about next, and subscribe.